Welcome to the Rainbow Room. This is episode 8 of Mohammed's criminal enterprise, the delirium at Badar. This again is Wookie. He joined us in our last production. He is again providing very, very cool in his Hawaiian shirt security services. And so Wookie wanted to be part of this ongoing series. We're going to pick up where we left off in our last program. We'll eventually conclude this series by reviewing what the 8th surah reveals about this disgusting episode in Muhammad's life. This is first blood. This is when Muhammad, seeking nothing other than to rob a caravan of his own kin and to abduct family members so he could ransom them. And Allah to achieve what he wanted most, which is to kill. This is the story of Badar. And the story of Badar cannot be denied. We have reviewed some of the most despicable statements originating from it. It came from the lips of Muhammad and the first Muslims. It is in every possible way hideous. And what Badar mostly proves, and we'll continue to chronicle it, is that Islam was born to kill. Allah is a demonic and sadistic psychopath, and he has one agenda, and that is the annihilation of all humankind. And Muslims are the tools that he is wielding to accomplish that mission. If this is kept in mind throughout everything we say about Islam, then you will understand the religion better than does any Muslim. Allah is a demonic psychopath, and his agenda is the annihilation of all humankind. The tools he wields to accomplish this mission are Muslims. Tabari, Volume 7, page 64, and Ishaq, page 307. As a reminder, particularly for those who may be listening for the first time, the oldest two and most credible hadith sources, hadith would mean oral reports from Muhammad and his companions, were compiled by Ishaq and Tabari. Ishaq compiled his sayings from Muhammad and his companions in the Sirah, the Sirat Rasul Allah, the life of Allah's messenger, and Tabari in the Taqriq, which is the history of Islam's formation. These two chronological, biographical presentations of Muhammad and the creation of Islam are actually more essential to the religion than the Quran. And they are no less legitimate than the Quran because they were conveyed by the exact same cast of characters in precisely the same way, the same time, the same place, the same manner. There is zero possibility that the Quran can be true and the hadith false under these circumstances. Moreover, without these hadith, these expressions chronicling Muhammad's words and deeds, the Quran is rendered trash. It is a garbled and cluttered, immoral document without rhyme nor reason, without any chronology or context, and it's devoid of its primary order, and that is that Allah commands Muslims to kill by following Muhammad's example. Muhammad's example is only presented in these hadith. And therefore, what I'm sharing with you is essential to Islam. And there are 4 hadith collections that are credible in the religion. They are the 4 earliest, Tabari, Ishaq, Muslim, and Bukhari. We will be citing from all of them. This Tabari translation is from SUNY State University of New York Press, while the rendition of Ishaq was translated by Gulim in the 1950s and is published by the University of Oxford. The messenger of Allah gave orders concerning the contents of the camp which the people had collected. And it was brought together among the Muslims. However, there was a difference of opinion concerning it. Those who had collected it said, "It is ours." Muhammad promised every man that he could keep all of the booty he took. Those who were fighting said, "If it had not been for us, you would not have taken it. We were distracted by the enemy so that you could take what you took." Those who were guarding the prophet for fear the enemy would attack him said, "By Allah, you have no better right to it than we have. We wanted to kill the enemy when Allah gave us the opportunity and made them turn their backs. And we wanted to take their property when there was no one to protect it. But we were afraid that they might attack the prophet. We protected him, so we have better right to it than you have." This is stunning, really, isn't it? This means, quite simply, that the first Muslims, those following Allah's orders and Muhammad's example, were murderous thieves. They were eager to kill, and they were particularly hunting down those who were trying to flee them. Well, this doesn't say so. We have read so many hadith that have affirmed that those they were killing were fathers and brothers, sons. These were all related family members. So the enemy was their own family. The reason they were the enemy is they knew Muhammad and Allah better than anyone today, and the Quran better than anyone today, because they heard it directly from Muhammad and had rejected it. They knew that it was nonsense. And so there are some insights here also I want to share with you. When those who said they were protecting the prophet, that first of all, Muhammad was not a prophet. He never issued a single prediction that came true. Not one. He is the ultimate non-prophet. Second, the reason they were protecting him is because of the Pledge of Aqaba. It is the single most important declaration in Islam. It is the declaration that begins the first year of the Islamic era. And so this is what they were discussing. And in the Pledge of Aqaba, it begins with pagans from Yathrib promising that they would protect Muhammad as they would their women. And then, based upon what Muhammad replied, they said they would wage war against all mankind. And this is the oath that the Quran repeats over and over again, saying that there are Muslims who have been true to their oath and have died killing for Allah. And there are those who are waiting for the opportunity to kill for Allah. This is the Pledge of Aqaba. The other thing that's important here is this is nothing but a criminal enterprise. Muhammad was the godfather of a institution that was really much closer to the mafia than it was to the start of a religion. The religion of Islam actually failed in Babel. It was actually in Petra, not Mecca. Mecca didn't exist at the time. But he left in shame with virtually no followers. And it was the criminal enterprise and the death cult, the terrorist manifesto of Islam, that emerged in Yathrib. And this was, as I have shared, first blood. And so the first Muslims were not fighting over coming to understand the nature of their religion. Their religion had nothing to do with it. They were simply squabbling over who got to steal what. It's really pathetic. To honor this gang of goons with the distinction of being the founders of a great religion requires total ignorance on behalf of the promoter. Among the first Muslims, there was not a single virtuous man. They were money grubbers, mercenaries, and malcontents, not unlike today's Gazans. And those may have been their more enduring qualities, again, like today's Gazans, because they were also terrorists, mass murderers, slavers, and rapists. Nothing much has changed in Islam over the 14 centuries, has it? And the reason it hasn't changed is Allah is the same old demonic despot. And Muhammad was always a slaver, a rapist, a terrorist, and mass murderer. According to Muhammad, it's good to kill for money, but it's bad to argue about it later. Tabari 764 and Ishaq 307. When we quarreled about the booty, we became very bad-tempered. Good grief. No, you were distempered when you were out killing your kin, when you hunted down your own family members to murder them and to rob them. You were distempered. This was just an argument over what you stole. Oh, so Allah removed it from our hands and handed it over to the messenger. You see, there you go. Muhammad said, you get to keep all that you stole. And then Allah says, nah. You give it all to my guy. In this matter, there can be seen the fear of Allah and the obedience to his messenger and the settling of differences. Therefore, Muhammad lied when trying to compel his reluctant jihadists to fight and kill their own family members, promising them that they could keep whatever they stole, making it all better. What else do you suppose that Muhammad may have said that was untrue? That Allah is a God? That there is a brothel up in the sky for mass murderers? Muhammad and Allah were partners. Throughout this all, Muhammad was to be obeyed. That is the edict of the Quran. But you can't obey Muhammad unless you know what he said and did, which is only chronicled in the Hadith. And of course, Allah was to be feared. Of course, he's the devil. Allah spends all of his time in hell, according to the Quran, torturing all that do not submit to him. He is genocidal. And in Islam, murder and thievery have their rewards. This is from Bukhari, volume 5, book 59, number 360. The total number of Muslim jihadists from Mecca, they weren't from Mecca, that was written 150 years later, they were from Petra, who fought at Badr and were given a share of the booty were 81. When their shares were distributed, their number was 101. Well, but Allah knows better. Ishaq 307, the spoils of war, surah. Did you hear that? The spoils of war, surah. The 8th surah of the Quran is called the spoils of war. Came down from Allah to his prophet. Well, Allah never spoke a word, and Muhammad was never a prophet. Concerning the distribution of the booty, when the Muslims showed their evil nature was in the division of the booty. It wasn't in murdering and abducting innocent men. It wasn't in stealing the property that was evil. No, it was arguing about their claim to it after they had done those things. Islam's not redeemable. It was born grotesque. Allah took it out of their hands and he gave it to the apostle. Tabari, volume 7, page 65. Allah's messenger came back to Medina, bringing with him the booty which had been taken from the polytheists. There were 44 captives in the messenger of Allah's possession. There were a similar number dead. 44 killed. 44 abducted. Sounds a lot like 10-7, doesn't it? Numbers weren't quite as robust, but these Muslims were just warming up. They were just practicing. They weren't really very good at being terrorists at this point. 44 captives. 44 dead. This is the birth of Islam. This is the terrorist raid that made the religion. And they brought back the booty. As for polytheists, all of the Arabs, including the first Muslims, were polytheists. And may I make this point? There really is no difference between believing in many false gods or one false god or no god at all. They're all the same. And these alleged polytheists were the custodians of the polytheistic rock pile known as the Kaaba. These are the polytheists that invented and promoted Islam. Every aspect of Islam, including the Hajj, including circumambulation, including the prostration prayer, all of it was invented and promoted by these polytheists who had managed the Kaaba as a religious scam several generations before Muhammad's birth. He just stole it from them, just like he stole their booty, their lives, their freedom on this occasion. Religions are typically born out of thievery. It would be unfair to Christianity and Judaism if I didn't point out they were also born out of thievery. Christianity stole the Messiah title and the Son of God title from David. And they stole the Savior title also from David, who came in his second of 3 lives to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim. They stole all of the promises that had been made to God's people, Israel, and distributed them as booty to Gentiles and their church. They ripped off Torah and prophets passages to justify their criminal act. And of course, in Judaism, the founder of Rabbinic Judaism, Rabbi Akiva, he also stole what was due the Messiah and Son of God, their Savior, Dod, by promoting a false Messiah, Bar Kokhba, in his place. And then they ripped off the Torah and prophets by creating a oral Torah, which they promoted as a Talmud. And it is those same rabbis who sold those Talmud stories to Mohammad to create the Quran and thus the menace of Islam. Ishaq 308. Muhammad halted on a sand hill and divided the booty that Allah had given him equally. When the Muslims from Medina met him at Ru'ah, they congratulated him on the victory Allah had granted. The victory was they had committed an act of armed robbery. They had attacked lightly armed civilians who were doing nothing but at this point celebrating and partying. They were out just having a good time, enjoying life. They tried to flee Mohammed, but his goons would have nothing of it. They slaughtered the 48, and they abducted the 48. And now they were celebrating a victory that they were attributing to their wannabe God, which would make their wannabe God a thief and a murderer. But one of the warriors replied, "What are you congratulating us about? We only met some bald old women like the sacrificial camels who were hobbled, and we slaughtered them." Now, there were some women there, to be sure. But when he says bald old women, he's just speaking of portly merchants who were aged and weren't prepared to be attacked and slaughtered by the Muslims wielding weapons. They were old, and they were as ill-prepared to fight as women. And they were the new sacrificial camel. Islam invented, so to give it some credit, invented a new form of human sacrifice on behalf of Allah. You see, in religions prior to Islam, the priests of that religion and the political establishment upholding the religion would go into a neighboring tribe typically, or they would go among the dissenters among their own tribe, and they would pick out those that they could use as an example to show their power and terrorize everyone into submission. And they would cut out the hearts and sacrifice the slaves or other tribes or the dissenting within their own tribe. But Islam had a new take on human sacrifice. Allah demands that Muslims die killing for him. So in Islam, human sacrifice is the annihilation of all humankind. That is the essence of Islam, and you should never forget it. What are you congratulating us about? We met some bald old women, like the sacrificial camels who were hobbled, and we slaughtered them. The apostle smiled because he knew that this description fit. End quote. Mohammed knew what he was doing. He was the head of a terrorist gang, a criminal enterprise. They were thieves. There was no religion involved. The only hint of religion was as Genghis Khan, Tamerlane, and Kublai Khan had used it, which is to conceive a religion that glorifies killing and plundering. The Romans were pretty damn good at it too, you know. So were the Spartans. The worst of human civilization is all an adaptation of this same theme. The gods glorify killing. They exonerate thievery. By any historical or rational criterion, the Battle of Badr wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. It was grossly immoral. A tussle between militants and merchants. And yet, Muhammad turned it into a miracle from Allah. He used it to resurrect his dying religion. The prophet's bloodlust led to these chilling lines. This is from Ishaq, page 308, and Tabari, volume 7, page 65. When the apostle was in Safra, Nadir was assassinated. When Muhammad reached Urk al-Zibya, he killed Uqba. When the Holy Prophet ordered him to be killed, Uqba said, Who will look after my children? Mohammed? Hellfire. The apostle replied. And he was killed. No Geneva Convention here. No sympathy, no morality. Just Muslims being Muslims. Ishak 3:12. Umar said to the apostle, let me pull out Shuyah's two front teeth. That way his tongue will stick out and he will never be able to speak against you again. Mutilation has always been part of Islam. That's why Muslims mutilated their Jewish victims on 10/7. Tabari, volume 7, page 66, and Ishak, page 309. Sawat Sahda said, I went to my house and the messenger was there with Abu Yazid, who was a Quraysh prisoner. His hands were tied to his neck. I could not restrain myself when I saw Yazid like that, and I shouted out to him. So Muhammad asked, Sada, are you trying to stir up trouble against Allah's messenger? This, of course, brought me back to my senses. Muhammad was gloating over a captive tied with his hands by his neck. And when someone recognized that abusing and restraining a fellow family member this way was grossly immoral and inappropriate, Allah's messenger said, why are you trying to stir up trouble against me? Of course, that brought her to her senses because she'd be the next to be bound and abused. Ishak, page 309. Bind Abu Aziz tight, for his mother is rich, and she may ransom him for a great deal of money. Allah's prophet, spelled with a F-I-T, proclaimed, then confirming that Islam was all about the money, Tabari 7, page 71, and Ishak 3:11. Among the captives was Abu Wada. Muhammad said, he has a son who is a shrewd merchant and has much money. The son slipped away at night and went to Medina and ransomed his father for 4,000 dirhams. There was, of course, no preaching of Islam. There was no mention of the Quran at this point. No message of salvation. Just give me the money. Tabari 7, page 71, and Ishak 3:12. The prophet said, Abbas, you must ransom yourself and your two nephews, Akil and Nafal, and your confederate, your ally, Utbah. Remember, Muhammad knew all of their names because these are the first men that had heard the Quran recitals around the Kaaba and knew that Muhammad was nothing but a money-grubbing scumbag. Yeah, they were well acquainted with each other. All of these men knew Muhammad and Allah far better than any Muslim today. For you were a wealthy man, Muhammad, Abbas said. I was a Muslim, but the people compelled me to fight against my will. Allah knows best concerning your Islam, Muhammad said. If what you say is true, Allah reward you for it. As for your outward appearance, you have been against us, so pay the ransom yourself. The messenger had previously taken 20 ounces of gold from him following the battle. So Abbas said, credit me with this amount towards my ransom. No, Muhammad replied, that money Allah has already taken from you and given to us. Allah appeared to be a kleptomaniac, in addition to being homicidal. Perhaps the world should have him arrested, tried, and incarcerated. Or you could wait for me to do it, because I'm sending that sorry soul to hell. Ishak 313. The Muslims told Abu Safan to pay them a ransom to free his son, Amir. He replied, am I to suffer the double loss of my blood and my money? After you have killed my son, Hamzallah, you want me to pay you a ransom to save Amir? How on earth do Muslims see this behavior as religious, as good? Muhammad and the first Muslims were obnoxious and appalling. They were demented, demonic. Bukhari, volume 5, book 59, number 357. The Badr warriors were given 5,000 dirhams each yearly. Umar, the future caliph, said, I will always give them more than what I will give to the others. Yeah, you were in a special place in Islam. If you were a thief, stealing from your own family, while in the presence of the fellow psychopath, Mohammed. And while Muhammad craved money, he lusted for more. Bukhari, volume 5, book 59, number 342. Umar said, when my daughter Hafsa lost her husband in the Battle of Badr, Allah's apostle demanded her hand, and I married her to him. Use the term marriage as it relates to Islam is a revolting corruption of the term. In Islam, women are slaves. They have absolutely no rights. They're treated like a chained animal. So when my daughter Hafsa lost her husband in the Battle of Badr, dying, killing for Muhammad, Muhammad demanded that he possess that chain, would have the opportunity to rape her. That's what this really means, because she was a slave. She had no control over anything. It's true of all Muslim women. The battle over, the booty collected, the ransoms negotiated. It was time for some situational scriptures, of course, since other religions encourage the faithful not to murder, steal, kidnap, or mutilate. Muhammad needed a special dispensation for his ungod. Therefore, let's weave the hadith into the fabric of the Quran to give Allah's recital the context, time, circumstance, and place it otherwise lacks. Tabari, volume 7, page 80. When the events of Badr were over, Allah revealed the 8th surah, the spoils of war, in its entirety. The two armies met. By the way, there were no armies, just merchants and militants. And Allah defeated the Meccans with Muslim swords. Allah is absolutely committed to the annihilation of all humankind. But because Allah is really nothing more than a toxic and venomous snake, and doesn't have opposable thumbs, he can't accomplish what he seeks alone. So he deploys Muslims as his slaves to do his bidding and to kill on his behalf. Allah defeated the Kabbalians with Muslim swords. This says 70 of them were killed and 70 of them were taken captive. So much for Arabic numbers. Muslims can't count. They have no capacity to tell the truth either. But they're very good at doing two things. They're either lying to you or they're killing you. Sometimes they can multitask and lie while they're killing you. The previous death toll, of course, was 44 killed and an equal number abducted. The lower number is also in line with Ishak's meticulously documented total of 50 dead and 43 taken hostage. The inability of Muslims to count was only matched by their illiteracy. So, what should be troubling here is the failure of these Muslims to remember how many people were involved, how many they had killed, how many they had abducted, when it's these exact same people that are solely responsible for the Quran and passing it on orally because there was no written Arabic at the time. The catalyst for transforming short-term observations to long-term memory is the vividness of the event and how many of our senses are deployed at the time. And since the carnage of Badr was caused by swinging swords and avoiding them, if the facts surrounding this day could not be accurately tallied, there is a 0% chance the inarticulate mumblings of the Quran were retained over the generations. Process that in your brain, please. Nothing was sacred. Muhammad was an incestuous annihilator. Tabari, 780. Abu Bakr said, "O Prophet of Allah, these are your people, your family. They are your cousins, fellow clansmen, and nephews. I think you should accept ransoms for them so that what we take from them will strengthen us." Abu Bakr was dad of the year. He was the creep that tossed his 6-year-old daughter into bed with a 66-year-old Mohammad and then closed the door. But he acknowledged that the people that these Muslim mercenaries had slaughtered were their own family, cousins and fellow clansmen, nephews. But he also acknowledged that it didn't matter that they were kin. They were abducted. And so there would be ransoms to pay, just as is the case with the malcontent Muslims in Gaza that demand ransoms be paid for the return of innocent Jews that they have abducted and tortured. Because they know that when you negotiate with terrorists, it strengthens them. Too bad Jews have not learned that lesson. Islam was financed by kidnapping and ransoming family members. The wealth of former friends and neighbors was forged into the terror's sword. Abu Bakr, Muhammad's blood-sucking promoter, was only interested in the money. Tabari, 781. What do you think, Kathab? Muhammad asked. I say you should hand them over to us so that I can cut off their heads. Hand Hamza's brother over to him so that he can cut off his head. Hand over Akil to Ali so that he can cut off his own brother's head. Thus Allah will know that there is no leniency in our hearts towards these non-Muslims. The messenger liked what Abu Bakr said and did not like what I said and accepted the ransoms for the captives. Bloodshed was entertaining and all, but money was more motivating. After all, they had already killed as many as they had abducted. They got bloodshed and booty. This is the disgusting milieu associated with the birth of Islam. It is nothing but a repulsive death cult and criminal enterprise. It has nothing to offer humanity but its annihilation. This tradition comes with an attempt to put a veil on Islam. It was a performance, one which a pagan god played a starring role. Tabari, 781. The next day, I went out to the non-prophet. In the morning, he was sitting with Abu Bakr, and they were weeping. Oh, I said, oh, messenger of Allah, tell me what has made you and your companion weep. If I find cause to weep, I will weep with you. And if not, I will pretend to weep because you are weeping. The non-prophet said, it is because the taking of ransoms, which has been laid before your companions, it was laid before me that I should punish them instead. Allah revealed, it is not for any prophet to have captives until he has made a great slaughter in the land. After that, Allah made booty lawful for them. It is not acceptable for a Muslim to steal, to abduct for ransom, until he has made a great slaughter. And for those of you who say, oh, we are just reading from a hadith, hell no. The Quran makes exactly the same statement. Islam isn't just a death cult. Islam isn't just committed to the annihilation of all humankind. It is savage. It is sadistic. It is demonic. Islam is the greatest curse ever unleashed on humanity. And yet we have the libertard regressives at universities and on the streets, state houses, and in the media that promote this God-forsaken death cult. I swear, humanity has fallen to the point where it is no longer worth saving. I made a post this morning where I said, goodbye, world. I'm bidding you goodbye because you are on the precipice of annihilating yourself. And you actually deserve your fate. Well, Hamas followed Islamic protocol. They were being good Muslims. They slaughtered 1,200 Jews, and then they abducted 250. That would make them good Muslims, following Muhammad's example. Ishaq 3:16. Following Badr, Muhammad sent raiders with orders to capture some of the Meccans and burn them alive. The malcontent Muslims in Gaza did this very thing, even to Jewish children. Burn them alive. But on the following day, he sent word to us, I told you to burn these men if you got hold of them. But I decided none has the right to punish by fire except Allah. So if you capture them, simply kill them, which means that Allah will have a chance to burn them. You see, Allah throughout the Quran is depicted hundreds of times, but only in one place. He's always in hell. And you know what he's doing in hell? Always the same thing. He's punishing those who didn't capitulate to him that his Muslims killed with fire. He's roasting them on a rotisserie where he actually uses the bodies of those that his goons have killed as the faggots of the fire. and then roasting others on them, tormenting them forever. So, Muhammad didn't want to steal Allah's great pleasure. Allah was more sadistic, you see, than even Muhammad. You can't burn them alive because, well, that's how Allah gets his jollies. If you capture them, you kill them so Allah can torture them. I mean, this is repulsive. There's no justification for allowing this religion. The way to fight this nemesis of Islam, this constant march of this death cult that has already killed 200 million people and has impoverished and raped and plundered 200 million more, is to expose and condemn the words of Muhammad and Allah. They are reprehensible. They are repulsive. We need collectively to shed our ignorance and simply proclaim the truth about this goddamn death cult. That is the way to fight Islam, not with bullets and bombs. Don't stoop to their level. Rise above them and use your words. Cite the Islamic scriptures. That is the surest way to kill this religion before it kills all mankind. Muhammad was a vengeful and sadistic psychopath, to be sure, and he relished torture. Allah was hell's warden, burning infidels for his entertainment, and they have confessed to their crimes. Now let's hold them accountable. Eshach 3:16. On Badar, the expedition, the terrorist raid, the messenger took the sword of Dul al-Fakar as booty. It had belonged to Mun-Ibdah. And on the day, he also took Abu Jahl's camel as booty. It was a Mari dromedary on which he used to go out on subsequent raids. Nothing but the best for Muhammad. After all, he was a prophet, right? Eshach 3:16. It was said that he wrote Muqatil, blood money, on his sword. Clever name. I wonder if it's been copyrighted. I am going to pause this program here, and we're going to pick up the story of the religiosity of mass murder, abduction, thievery, the birth of Islam and its savagery, and the intent of this death cult in our next program, because in our next program we are going to turn to the 8th surah, which is called Al-Anfal, the spoils of war. Now, mind you, there was no war. And all that happened here is a gang of armed goons bludgeoned some overweight merchants to death and captured and abducted some others and traded them for ransom. But nonetheless, Islam was born on this day. And so it had to be turned into a religious crime. Allahu Akbar and all. And so as we conclude this program and begin the next, I again thank you for listening. This is disgusting material, and I know it. It is repulsive beyond belief. There is nothing as grotesque as Islam. Allah is a demented psychopath, sadistic and savage. And he is committed to only one thing: the annihilation of all humankind. He is Satan, after all. And Mohammad was his willing despot, also a psychopath, a rapist, a pedophile, a sexual pervert, a thief, a slave trader, someone who engaged in human trafficking, a man who subjugated all women under his control to slavery. He was a mass murderer. He was a ruthless terrorist. He was a thief. And those were his more benign qualities, because his worst characteristic is he attributed this horrid behavior to a wannabe God and started a religion that would rob 200 million people of their lives. It's the story of Islam, and the world needs to hear it. So I thank you for listening. This has been the 8th episode of Mohammed's Criminal Enterprise on the YAHOWAH blog, and I am your host, Craig Winn.